The Overwatch comeback is real, and I couldn't be more happy or surprised about it. Turns out, Marvel Rivals didn't kill Overwatch, it forced it to improve. And not only that, because Marvel Rivals is so sharply designed, it doesn't appeal to everybody, even though it's more of a mainstream game. So that means we brought a whole bunch of new players to the hero shooter genre, and if you want a game that is more polished, with more carry impact, with better performance, and overall better balancing. I mean, they try to balance Overwatch, and they don't with Marvel Rivals. Boom, there you go. Bob's your uncle. Overwatch somehow pulled off the rope-a-dope. They barely added much of anything, just sort of released things that they were already working on, kept the course, didn't flip the table again and reinvent everything and switch it all to mirror what Marvel Rivals was doing. Instead, what they did was stay the course for the most part, other than adding, hero bans, which they should have done like 100 years ago. The present state of Overwatch, as well as the future, is looking good to me. And it's the first time in a while that I felt fan consensus agreed on that. How many years of depression has it been looking towards the failure of PvE? I'm starting to feel like we've got that in the rear view mirror and looking towards the future. And listen, I love both these games, but there's a really cool Sega versus Nintendo classic console war going on, and it's making the customer win. Today we'll talk more about Overwatch, but I'm excited about Marvel Rivals as well, but it's got its downfalls that not everybody likes. I think as well, the community needed time to gain the momentum of the positive things that Overwatch had been doing, where there has been a series and a history now of hero releases that weren't broken. The past year, I'd say, been good, and Aqua probably still in that same philosophy now that the new team is properly underway with their momentum, adding new game modes and map reworks that make the game much more playable. I feel like they straight been winning on that front, willing to take risks to make fun new experiences, but also rein it in if it's not working for the competitive crowd. The map and mode design team is an A+, even if they haven't really been able to perfect making every mode as perfectly competitive as possible, especially since some of those forgotten modes are getting put into the other fun modes like stadiums. And speaking of stadium, while I don't think it's setting the world on fire right now, and it's just one of the many options of modes, I do think that it has the potential long-term into the future as they continuously add more and more heroes to really start to keep a foothold of the Overwatch player base to return, which is a key word that Blizzard has been using now, which is very different to their philosophy of how they've developed all of Blizzard games, frankly, but Overwatch in the past. In the most recent blog post, they explain this in further depth, saying that each season should have reasons to come back and reasons to stay, which is an important distinction in this entire philosophy, that they're thinking of reasons to return. This is Blizzard we're talking about. They expect you to only play their game. In the past anyway, whether it was World of Warcraft or Overwatch 1 or Diablo or whatever, they thought that their game franchises were just so good that they're going to monopolize your time as a gamer. In 2025 now, with loads and loads of competition for the free-to-play and live service business model, well, that's just not really a reality anymore. There isn't so many players, especially this new up-and-coming generation, that sticks to only one game. There's way too many good ones in competition all the time, so you have to stay fresh and competitive from month to month, day to day. That's just the reality of the industry right now. They don't get to sit back on their laurels and assume that the hero shooter genre will just be in their corner forever, because they've already lost that opportunity. But thankfully, now it's forced them to evolve into a brand new strategy here, where they're saying is, we're going to compete for your attention. Good. That's what you should have been doing the whole time. But again, different dev team. The old dev team didn't think this way at all. The very next season, season 17, will introduce a new Flashpoint map, have reworks to old maps like Vasa and New Junk City. It's safe to say later in the season we will get a preview of the new support hero Aqua as well. And they said the perk system also lends itself to this philosophy. We're working on a big perks update for season 18, where every hero will have something new to experiment with, and each perk will align more closely to our vision for the system. Features like hero bans and map voting, which is coming in next season, season 17, I'm excited for that, double as tools that enable us to get an even better read on the urgency for that maintenance. For example, Sombra's high ban rate sheds light on necessary changes we'll be making in the future. Sombra rework 1000.0, while Freya's jump in ban rate after her buffs urged us to push hotfix adjustments. Map voting will do much of the same, helping us inform our map reworks later in the year and bring more attention to modes that aren't meeting expectations. Let's take a look at the things that Overwatch has been doing well, culminating some momentum over time. First, hero releases. What a big difference a few short years makes. Lifeweaver, Illari, and Mauga all had balance problems when they were released. Lifeweaver was too weak, Illari was too strong, Mauga was horrifically oppressive at the high tiers. These problems did eventually work themselves out and would have been better with the hero ban meta, but this past is long behind them because now let's look at Venture, Juno, Hazard, Freya. For the mass player base anyway, these heroes aren't considered too obnoxious. Freya is the most recent hero release and does have an uptick in ban rate, but nothing close to like Sombra. I think Venture is almost as annoying and obnoxious as DPS Doom, but they hardly get played and is a fine flex DPS option. Juno is so incredibly inoffensive of a kit that despite her having a very high pick rate and win rate at the highest tiers, she doesn't really offend any other division of the game really. And kind of the same thing for Hazard, who was dominant for his season of the game, but let's not forget that Marvel Rivals has lots of heroes like that. This game's needed hero bans all the way back here, okay? This is when I said we have to have hero bans because the CC and disable power creep was already getting obnoxious. Then they just added more and more power creep BS to the rest of Overwatch 1, never added hero bans. And something I've been ecstatic about coming back to Overwatch playing its competitive hero bans is that it's a better system than Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals looks behind the curve now on hero bans because they have everybody vote and then it gets a random selection based on the weighting of those votes. And if the enemy team also bans the same heroes, well, there's just a mirror ban, and that's pretty bad. It's even worse in Marvel Rivals because it has so much obnoxious stuff. So much so that there's a bit of a culture where you actually tell the enemy what you're banning so you guys can get 4 bans on the table as opposed to just 2. Overwatch has a weighted system where there's rank choice voting, where your first placed ban is weighted more and then less on second and third position. Your team only gets the 2, but you put 3 in because the enemy, if they also ban something you ban, it's like a cumulative team effort. So like both teams are coordinating to get obnoxious things out of the hero roster, which is how you get a hero like Sombra to have such a high ban rate. Because even if she's not your #1 most annoying hero, she's probably in your top 3, which is why she's going to be getting retuned or rebalanced or reworked or whatever they're looking to do again in order to avoid having such a high discrepancy in ban rate like across the entire game. But beyond her, the bans are pretty healthy. And to me, the ban system works even better and is more effective in Overwatch 2, which otherwise is a much more balanced game. Because let's note, Sombra isn't oppressive for win rates. She's just annoying and obnoxious and a playstyle people don't want to play against. Compare that to Marvel Rivals, where if you do not ban the top performing heroes, they will destroy and take over the game, which maybe is kind of the point of the bombastic hero shooter fantasy. Whereas in Overwatch 2, because it's so much better balanced, you have the opportunity to ban just what you don't like, not what you have to ban or you're going to get blown out. That's an awesome, liberating experience and an even better version of bans than I ever thought possible. Because if you have to get to a really high ranking before there's perma bans on a few heroes, that's a well-balanced game, guys. And looking back to Marvel Rivals again, it's widened the funnel for players coming into this genre, which is a great thing for both games, frankly. And I think it's kind of funny to watch, being a decade-long Overwatch player myself, to see the Marvel Rivals players go through the like 5 stages of Overwatch grief, where they're like, we need a role queue, we need certain bans, this hero's overpowered, all the complaints that sort of plagued Overwatch 1 and forced them to twist themselves into knots, trying to figure out how to get this game into a workable form with, you know, multitasking, making an RPG game on the side. We're really in a beautiful place when we have 2 versions of the genre that are really strong and different from one another. I want to speak more in another video about my love for Marvel Rivals as well, but overall, because Overwatch has better performance, more carry potential, and is more individually minded in general, I find my more competitive edge to feel satisfied and rewarded in Overwatch, where I feel like my skill and execution matter, which is amplified by the new ban system as well as the perk system, which is going to make whichever heroes that I specialize in even more powerful. Whereas in Marvel Rivals, while it has a lot of strengths and is a very fun game, a lot of times you're kind of just one player in the mass of chaos of ability spam, and it can be difficult to get those clear edges to carry your team to victory. That's a bit of a double-edged sword as well, because in 5v5 Overwatch 2, you certainly have to feel like you're always carrying, and it's much more try hard and sweaty. But I think that's a very good trade-off and counterbalance between the two games. I did try to warn you guys way back in December of 2024. I said Marvel Rivals is very fun, but I warned you all that these games get sweaty quickly as players improve. MMR settles, meta is established, discovery is always the most fun stage of any game. Enjoy it. But let's hold off the grand proclamations for a bit. And I thought this reply was sweet. Maluscarian says, doubt. Rivals got released with double the Overwatch classic heroes. It would take a long time before sweat comes in. And I said, my sweet summer child. Way back at season 0, they thought it was sweet because nobody had taken the time to learn a character like Spider-Man yet. And before you know it, these casual players were not having such a casual time when the Kamikaze Dive-a-thon started in the last season. Well, granted, they've rebalanced it since then, but there's a lot of really oppressive mechanics in Marvel Rivals for sure, so it got sweaty quite quickly. People figured out Wolverine, they figured out the tank synergies, they figured out everything. It's still more forgiving and more ult-based and more spammy and less punishing, but overall, it's a sweaty game. Not as sweaty in mechanics necessarily, but definitely sweaty in the execution of your teamwork, which makes it beautiful in its own right, but it was not gonna stay casual forever, and it isn't. So if you're going to play a sweaty game anyway, why not play the one that makes you feel like the superhero as opposed to needing to work with your team? But now I want to talk about Stadium and the future of it looking long term. The Stadium queue times, I think, are indicative of it having like a medium interest level. They did put out an update, which was really important to try to fix the queue times a bit. It is a separate mode with its own MMR and competitive matchmaking, supposedly, they said. Not that it feels like that. There was an important patch where they fixed an issue that they no longer apply a modifier for new players to every player in Stadium. Players should start to see faster queues and more competitive matches as they continue to play Stadium. I think regardless, before or after this change, the support queues were through the roof, partially because the support tier and class in Overwatch in general, I mean, support queues at high MMR are really high anyway, but in Stadium particularly, I feel the other roles are lacking in hero diversity, and I think that will work its way out over time, especially when we look at the roadmap. This roadmap is just for Stadium. There's other changes coming to the main game as well that we mentioned earlier. Some of these notes on the roadmap I don't think are that heavy hitting, but I'll point out the ones that I think are. A constant cadence of heroes for sure, and a lot of heroes that I think would be quite fun to specialize and one trick in Stadium, because the problem with Stadium for me is that I don't really main Soldier or Reaper. Sure, I'll play them in competitive to meet the situation potentially, but I don't want to play them all the time. But there is one hero that I definitely would play all the time, Junkrat. All right, so look out. I'm playing Stadium with my friends and blasting my way to victory, trying out all the different builds, and I think any hero that gives you that spark of joy where you want to force them to work in weird situations and learn all their builds, that's the hero you want. And I think they picked a good lineup of heroes to be coming: Junk, Sigma, Zen, Sojourn, Winston, and Brigitte. I can see all of them being really fun in Stadium, adding to the appeal overall as more players get their preferred hero in the mode, but also just adding to diversity in the game overall. Because I'll be honest, that gets tiring playing against Juno, Moira, Mercy every single game. And the big heavy hitter changes to Stadium are coming in Season 19, which, yes, that is half a year away, but it's getting draft mode, consumables, and item system upgrades. By then, the hero roster will be expanded, so there'll be more builds to consider at any given time, and I think the draft mode feature, I don't know if it's going to be pick and ban, but even just a selection draft would be a big upgrade to the game, because there's certain matchups you don't want to be locked in play for 30 minutes without seeing it coming. So I definitely think that makes this mode way better, which basically would mean there'd be a public picking order so you can see, okay, well, they're playing the beam heroes. Maybe I don't want to force Genji into this or whatever. And then on top of that, they've already had hero bans in the main game. Maybe by this point, 6 months down the line, adding 6 more heroes overall to the roster, they might feel that they can afford to have some heroes banned out. We'll see. But a pass on the item systems as well as some consumables added, it's just going to make that mode a lot more interesting and dynamic, I think. So look forward to that. And overall, when you combine these aspects together, are they fulfilling their philosophy? Reasons to come back and reasons to stay. Quick play ranked Stadium, I think there's reasons for each one. Quick play looking like kind of the weakest option in a way, because I've long since wanted them to put more progression and interesting things in quick play. That never really happened. Marvel Rivals does this a little bit better right now, where they have the Lord system where you get the Lord icon from completing the challenges. But Stadium has the format to let you flex on your favorite heroes and enjoy their mechanics, even if necessarily they're not your most competitive options for ranked. And then in ranked, because the hero ban system is superior, that side of the game is winning too. Holy moly, Overwatch did it. For both the present and the future, things are looking up. I'm super happy with the state of the game. Couldn't be more impressed. Times looked dire with the juggernaut of a competitor with NetEase and Disney backing them. But lo and behold, this small indie company got their act together and looks like they're properly servicing the game with a philosophy that I think is going to maintain itself and improve over time into the future. Man, Overwatch has been out 10 years. It looks like they're trying to go another decade, frankly. Better late than never. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito. I'll see you guys next time.